the male gonadal hormones. We have about 12 systems in our body, starting from the nervous system to the reproductive system. So 11 different systems. And the reproductive system is the only system which is different between males and females. The other very interesting fact is that we have about 7 to 8 billion people on the surface of the earth. It is astonishing that the reproductive system is the only system that is not essential for the life of an individual. It is not an essential life, but it affects the activities of other systems and helps in the perpetuation of species or formation of gametes. So the importance of the reproductive system is immense. So in this lecture, we are going to learn about the male gonadal hormones. We're going to start in brief regarding the anatomy of the male reproductive organ and then go into the hormonal aspect of it. So this is the male reproductive organ. To start with, the male reproductive system is mainly responsible for two things. Number one, formation of gametes, which is sperm. And number two is the production of the hormone testosterone. Testosterone. This word or this hormone you have heard from the first lecture that I started with endocrinology. There was a time where young males were castrated to produce units. Was a custom in which units are individual that do not produce secondary sex characters because they have been castrated early in life. As a result, these, although they are apparently normal, but their secondary sex characters do not develop. We have learned from Berthold's experiments that transplantation of gonads into castrated roosters prevented loss of male secondary sex characters and sexual behavior. So the importance of male reproductive hormone, which is testosterone, is a lot. Apart from helping in the process of spermatogenesis, which is production of sperm, it helps in development of secondary sex characters, which is also required for a normal individual. I just want to let you know that we are going to start a little bit of brief description of the male anatomy, male reproductive system anatomy, and then go into more depth in learning of testosterone. So what you're looking here is this scrotum. This is a sac-like structure in which is the testes. Okay, so during fetal development, the testes actually develop early in life. During the fetal life, the testes develop within the abdomen, okay? And then they descend to the scrotum during the later stage of fetal development. The location of the testes is very important. This location is very, very important. Why? Because spermatogenesis, that is formation of the male gamete sperm, takes place in here, and the spermatogenesis requires a temperature lower than the normal body temperature. This descent of the testes from the abdomen to the scrotum is required. If this descent does not take place, it leads to a condition which is known as cryptochiasm, that is, which means hidden testes, in which the testes, instead of migrating to the scrotum, remains in the abdomen. Okay, it can be surgically, descended to the testes, but the condition is known as cryptochiasm. A very interesting part is that this testis, the descent from the abdomen to the testis is essential, as I said, because spermatogenesis does not take place at the body temperature. It takes place 1 to 3 degrees lower than the body temperature. As such, it is absolutely a must that the testes needs to be away or hanging or not touching the human body. An interesting fact is that it is a myth. Remember, this is a myth that if males take a shower before a sexual intercourse, then a hot shower before a sexual intercourse, that actually diminishes the male's fertility and can act as a contraception, which is absolutely wrong, because it takes about 70 days for the entire spermatogenesis to take place. So really, they need to have a really long bath in order to make it at the level of contraception. So apart from that, in mid-50s, I think, there was another, this is like, I have read it somewhere in an article, I think. They were having some problems with male fertility at that point. And tight jeans were in fashion, okay? So that these tight jeans, what they were doing is they were bringing the scrotum with the testes very close to the male body. As a result, the body temperature was the temperature of the testes. As a result, what was happening is spermatogenesis was hampered, and which led to male infertility. So I just want to make you understand the importance of this descent from the abdomen to the scrotum in order to facilitate the process of spermatogenesis. So the question is, what is spermatogenesis? Spermatogenesis is formation of adult mature sperm from the very stem cell, which is known as spermatogonia. Okay, so we'll learn about a little bit of that later on. But remember that spermatogenesis takes place in the testes. And the males have 2 testes hanging on 2 sides of the body. And this testes, this is the testes, it's oval shaped. And sits on top of the testes another organ which is known as epididymis. The epididymis is an important organ because this is where sperm get the maturation. So just production of sperm is not enough. It needs to mature, and that maturation or the functional capacity of the sperm is obtained in the epididymis. Okay, so from the epididymis, then it moves to the vas deferens. Okay, this is the vas deferens. Now in here, the vas deferens has a couple of other things aligned with it. There are arteries, veins, connective tissue along with the vas deferens. They form like a bundle together, holding the testes in place, and that's known as a spermatic cord. Okay. The vas deferens then moves in and comes in contact with the seminal vesicle. Okay, seminal vesicle produces a fluid which is known as seminal fluid or seminal fluid. Very important. Remember, this is the main source of semen in the male individual. So it becomes very important that this volume of the volume or the fluid part of it is obtained from there. Some of the major ingredients, or I would say major things that come along with the seminal fluid is it has high concentration of fructose, which is very important, which can be easily metabolized by the sperm. So I want to mention here is, remember, this is, so fructose is the main source, not glucose, okay? Prostaglandins come in, fibrinogen, which is required for sperm clot within the vagina, is also part of the seminal vesicle fluid. Going ahead from the seminal vesicle, then comes in what is called the ejaculatory duct. So you can see the ejaculatory duct then passes into another gland, which is known as the prostate. The prostate produces a fluid which is known as prostatic fluid. It is rich in enzymes and acid phosphates and amylase, and it prevents sperm coagulation in the vagina. So this part, the ejaculatory duct, when it passes through the prostate, is known as the prostatic urethra. Then it passes through this region in here, is known as the membranous urethra. And in here, there is another gland, which is known as bulbourethral gland or Cowper's gland, which produces mucus-like secretion. Then comes when the membranous, this this part is a membranous urethra, and it goes into the penis, which is known as the penile urethra. So remember, urethra, the word urethra is because it is this tube-like structure that is coming from the urinary bladder is urethra, and so it takes its name from there. Okay, so just a little bit review before we go ahead is testes in the scrotum, and testes has epididymis. This is the vas deferens. Vas deferens gets its input from the seminal vesicle, the seminal fluid, which becomes the ejaculatory duct. Ejaculatory duct, when it joins, passes through the prostate from the prostatic urethra. The prostatic urethra also has a connection with the urethra of the urinary bladder, and then from the prostatic urethra it becomes the membranous urethra, and then the penile urethra. This is the penis through which the semen is discharged. It is the penis has several muscular layer, and these are called corpus cavernosa, corpus spongiosum, and these help in the contraction and relaxation so that the semen can come out from the orifice. So this is in brief the anatomy of the male reproductive organ. Okay, so we are now going to concentrate on this region, which is the testes. Okay. So the testes, if you look at the testes, consists of huge or large number of convoluted tubules, which is known as the seminiferous tubule. Okay, the seminiferous tubule joined together at one point to form the retitestes, which then go into the epididymis. So as I was saying, this leads to vas deferens. The vas deferens, along with the blood vessels and nerve, form which is known as a spermatic cord. Now, if I take a cross section of this seminiferous tubule, you should be able to see this section. Okay, so this is where it becomes very, very important to learn about the most important part of this lecture, which is the hormones related to it. Okay. Now, here I want you to focus on certain things. Number one, so these, you can see these are the seminiferous tubules, and these are inside in here, okay? So these seminiferous tubule, apart from sperm, has two other hormones, okay? It has two other hormones, and these are So I repeat, the seminiferous tubule, apart from the sperm cells, has two other cells, which is number one is the Sertoli cells, and the second one is the Leydig cells. So in here, the Sertoli cells are within these lobules that you can see, and these cells, the Sertoli cells, are called the nurse cells, okay? They are called the nurse cells, and they have two functions. Number one, they help in the process of spermatogenesis, and number two, they help in production of a protein which is known as androgen binding protein, which we will learn very soon, ABP, which is androgen binding protein. So the Sertoli cells has two functions. Number one, it helps in spermatogenesis. Number two, it helps in the synthesis of androgen binding protein. The second is the Leydig cells that you see in here. The Leydig cells are also known as interstitial cells, and they are the main source that produce testosterone, okay? Testosterone has many functions. For example, it affects the CNS, central nervous system. It helps in the bone growth. It is responsible for secondary sex characters. It is help in masculization and many others. But the primary function of testosterone is helping in the production of spermatogenesis, which is production of mature sperm, okay? So as I said, from spermatogonia to formation of spermatozoa or mature sperm is a process which is known as spermatogenesis, and this requires testosterone for its function. So this helps us to understand a little bit more. So now the question comes, what is the role of gonadotropes, that is production of LH and FSH? We have learned this before from the pituitary, right? From the anterior pituitary produces two hormones. One is called luteinizing hormone LH. The other is called follicle stimulating hormone FSH, which we know is responsible for male reproductive function. So we'll do both one after the other, okay? So just understand the LH that is produced from the pituitary acts at the Leydig cell, okay? Leydig cells to produce testosterone. And what we said, the FSH, on the other hand, acts on the Sertoli cells to produce the androgen binding protein. So let's do this a little bit more detail. Number one, the LH acts on the Leydig cell, as I said, Leydig cell here, to stimulate testosterone synthesis. It binds to specific G protein coupled receptors linked with adenylate cyclase and also increases cyclic AMP production. So once it does that, it helps in the production of testosterone. One important thing to remember here is the involvement of STAR protein, STAR protein, in the transport of the in the formation of testosterone, because remember, the starting material of testosterone is cholesterol. So cholesterol is required for testosterone production, and that STAR protein, STAR protein, helps to transport cholesterol to the inner mitochondrial membrane to induce steroidogenesis, which is nothing but testosterone, which we will learn in the next slide. The next is Sertoli cells, and how does it help? Okay, the hormone FSH that is produced by the anterior pituitary helps or promotes Sertoli cells to stimulate spermatogenesis. The process of spermatogenesis is absolutely dependent on the presence of testosterone. So it is absolutely essential that testosterone be produced in order for spermatogenesis to take place. It is seen that FSH acts at the level of Sertoli cells to produce cyclic AMP. In addition, to promote another protein synthesis, which is known as androgen binding protein. This androgen binding protein basically acts as a carrier of testosterone to move to the seminiferous tubule, and then this in turn goes into the epididymis. So this entire process, testosterone production, then androgen binding protein, formation of spermatozoa from spermatogonia, which is spermatogenesis, all are required in order for a mature sperm to be produced and to move from the seminiferous tubule to the epididymis. This actually takes us to the next part, as I just said, that the testosterone production actually is dependent on the initial molecule, which is known as cholesterol. Cholesterol serves as a substrate for pregnenolone. So you can see from cholesterol forms pregnenolone, and through a subsequent several steps in the process, it produces testosterone. So this movement of cholesterol to form pregnenolone requires an enzyme which is called P450 SCC, side chain cleavage enzyme, which is required in order to proceed in either pathway in order to produce testosterone. Some of the main part is the physiological role of androgens. Okay, so what is the role of androgen in the reproductive system? And we will learn each one of these points. So before that, just understand that testicular androgen are responsible for growth and development of tissue and organs, which are part of the male reproductive system. The role of gonadal androgen in the differentiation and development of the male urogenital system, accessory sex organs, and the external genitalia, I'm pretty sure you understand. All of this, it requires androgen, which is nothing but testosterone is an example of that. After initial actions of testosterone in early fetal development, the gonads remain quiescent. That is, the gonads are not functional. So initially there is fetal development, testosterone, little bit of production, so that there is a sexual differentiation, and then it remains quiescent till the puberty. It hits puberty, where the gonadal activity increases in response to the pituitary hormone, which is LH and FSH. The elevated are high levels of these gonadotropins, which you can see helps in the production of the testosterone. So we are starting with the first one, which we have dealt before, which is spermatogenesis depends on both FSH and testosterone, as I said. So what is spermatogenesis? That is formation of spermatozoa from spermatogonia. Okay, so this entire process of spermatogenesis requires FSH and testosterone. So testosterone is produced by the Leydig cells under the influence of LH, and FSH acts at the Sertoli cells to produce androgen binding protein, which actually is responsible, which is a carrier protein of testosterone. As a result, it can act to promote spermatogenesis. So I just want to review once more before we go ahead. Is FSH interaction with Sertoli cells. You can see this is basically showing you everything together so that it makes more sense. So this is at the level of the brain, which is hypothalamus, and this is anterior pituitary and posterior pituitary. So from the anterior pituitary, you can see there are two hormones that are coming out. One is LH, the other is FSH. The LH acts on the Leydig cells to produce testosterone. FSH, on the other hand, acts at the seminiferous tubule or Sertoli cells in the seminiferous tubule to produce androgen binding protein. So testosterone is carried by the androgen binding protein to a region where spermatogenesis is taking place, which helps in the production of mature sperm. Okay, this FSH and LH is under the negative feedback loop. I want you to understand this, which brings us to the next topic of the previous slide. Testosterone acts to modulate reproductive behavior and sexual function, which is, try to understand, when we first learned about the female reproductive hormones, which is estrogen, we learned that GnRH, LH, FSH are all produced in cyclic order. That is, it has a cyclicity in which they are produced. Okay, cyclicity means it goes higher, then comes down, goes higher, then comes in cycles. But the production of testosterone, on the other hand, is tonic. That is, it is produced at the same level. Tonicity is produced at the same level, one after the other. So the testicular androgen exert a tonic inhibitory feedback action on the primary gonadotropin secretion, which means, like estrogen or unlike estrogen, estrogen has both positive and negative feedback effect on the anterior pituitary, but testosterone has just one, which is negative feedback on the anterior pituitary. So this actually, the testosterone production, is one of the major reasons why it has its action. It produces several different actions in the male reproductive system. So next is the sexual differentiation of interstitial nuclei of the anterior hypothalamus. Okay, so what is sexual differentiation? This, in here we are talking about 3 or 4 different categories. One is women, men, heterosexuals, and homosexual. So the preoptic area or anterior hypothalamus of the brain. So within the brain, a region of the brain is called hypothalamus, and within the hypothalamus there is certain nuclei that do different tasks. Okay, and these nuclei are known as interstitial nuclei of the anterior hypothalamus. There are 4 of them, 1, 2, 3, and 4. These are the ones that have been discovered and discussed or researched more. These 4 nuclei have been shown to be related with the male sexual behavior. Okay, the volumes of the 4 cell groups in this region, 1, 2, 3, 4, INAH, were measured in the postmortem tissue of 3 subject groups: women, men, heterosexual, actually 4 groups: women, men, heterosexual, and homosexual. So heterosexuals are those individuals who have both partners, male and female, and homosexuals are those I repeat again, 3 subject groups where, or 4 subject groups where in order to see the volume of the 4 cell groups, there were subgroups that were taken into account: women, men, heterosexual, and homosexual. No differences were found between the groups in the volumes of INAH in 1, 2, and 4. However, it was noted that INAH3 more than twice, it was much larger, more than the size was almost twice the size in the heterosexual male than in female. It was also seen that it was more than twice as large in heterosexual male as in homosexual male. So It was much larger. This findings indicated that INH3 is dimorphic with sexual orientation, or at least in men, and suggests that sexual orientation is a biological substrate. So it has nothing to do with, social or environmental. It is, or psychological. It is very much scientific, and it can be considered as a biological substrate. Then we go into the next part, which is testosterone stimulates development of male secondary characters. Puberty is the last phase of the complex process of sexual maturation, as you all know, a process in which the individual acquires a reproductive competency or ability to fertilize. The drastic developmental and behavioral changes in the male puberty results with enhanced, there's huge influx of testosterone secretion by the testes, and the actions of the testosterone is helpful for many target tissue and helps in spermatogenesis. Apart from that, it also helps in production of sex organs. The accessory reproductive glands are dependent on testosterone to enable them to contribute to secretory products to the semen. So as we learned, seminal vesicle produces seminal fluid, prostatic fluid is produced by prostate, bulbourethral gland produces mucus. These are all dependent upon testosterone. Androgens increase the content of endoplasmic reticulum within the cells of the prostate, seminal fluid, and bulbourethral gland, as I just mentioned. In the skin, sebaceous glands activity are stimulated by androgen, and so it is, so apart from the secondary sex characters or reproductive secondary sex characters, it also has its effect on the skin. It also has its effect on kidneys, and there are many other effects of testosterone on several other parts of the body. One of the important effects of androgen is its action on muscles, cartilage, and other target tissue. A major extragenital site of androgen action is the skeletal muscle, which may account in part of the body weight, or that may be the reason there is difference in the weight or body weight between males and females. Growth and musculature, growth of the skeletal muscle, muscle formation of different parts of the body are dependent on the testosterone. In addition, a deepening of voice is dependent on testosterone. Anabolic steroids, which are synthetic molecules which was developed with the hope of obtaining a complex separation of the androgenic and myotropic, which is anabolic action of testosterone. So what we are saying here is there are several anabolic steroids that are available, which help in the muscle cartilage formation. But these anabolic steroids, if you understand that these are misused by many people, especially by athletes. The abuse potential of anabolic steroids has been evident for many, many years, right? Particularly among individuals looking to enhance their athletic performance in competitive sports. Most professional sports organizations now they do not allow the use of these substrates and require that the blood tests be done regularly in order to see whether they have used anabolic steroids to enhance their performance. Unfortunately, these amateur athletes who wish to improve performance, as well as those seeking to achieve increase in the lean body mass for cosmetic purposes, do not realize the side effects of using anabolic steroids. It can lead to infertility, virilization in women. There can be atrophy on the testes, hair growth or loss. It affects the liver, adrenal gland damage, and many other problems. So we have a separate discussion session on this. So I hope you will participate actively. This we went over it, which is basically the HPT axis, which is hypothalamus, pituitary, and testis axis, which I'm hoping that all of you understand, and how well the testosterone is affecting the negative. It has a negative feedback loop in place with the hypothalamus and pituitary and helps in the formation of spermatogenesis. Okay, this is a little bit in little more details about the mechanism of hormone action. So we have done this before in, I think, in the first lecture. Testosterone, which is a steroid hormone, actually passes through the lipid bilayer, and you can see under the influence of 5-alpha reductase, it is converted into dihydrogen testosterone. And in here, it is attached by heat shock protein, okay? So once it needs to go for its action inside the nucleus, the heat shock protein is left behind. It goes and acts at the DNA level. And then the process starts with transcription, translation to produce proteins, okay? Just remember that androgen receptors belong to the family of steroid hormone receptor. And so these are important. The entire mechanism of androgen action is required for its action. Some of the physiological role of estrogen in males. So it is interesting that that estrogen, which is considered to be a female hormone, is very much needed by males. Okay, so number one is fertility. It has been seen that estrogen receptor knockout mice, the testes undergo progressive atrophy, that is, testes are not functional, they decrease in size, and this is associated by decrease in the sperm count, motility, viability. If this happens, if the sperm is not functional, it will not be able to do its task of basically impregnating the ova, and as such, it will become infertile. Estrogen regulates the reabsorption of luminal fluid in the head of the epididymis, so it helps to for the sperm to acquire its functional ability. Disruption of estrogen function causes sperm to enter the epididymis much more diluted rather than concentrated, resulting in infertility. I want you to understand this. So it is very important that in the semen, there should be a particular concentration of sperm. If there is a lower concentration of sperm, which is known as oligospermia, where the number of sperms are very less, it leads to infertility. So the next is male sexual behavior. Estrogen receptor knockout mice have been shown to have decreased mating behavior, such as a less amount of ejaculation, erection, and so on. The conversion of testosterone to estradiol is critical for masculization of hypothalamic nuclei that control sex and aggressive behaviors. Next is epiphyseal fusion. Several experiments have been shown, but some of the interesting two stories I would like to say is there was a 28-year-old man with complete estrogen resistance because of a nonsense mutation in the estrogen receptor gene. So there was a mutation in the estrogen receptor gene. As a result, what happens was, despite normal virilization and adult male testosterone, it was seen that even when the puberty was over, the man had unfused epiphysis. So the skeletal system, the bone did not fuse properly. It had unfused epiphysis, a bone age of 15. Okay, remember the age of the person is 28, but the bone age was 15, and the height was 6 feet 8 inches. So very, very tall individual. So bone epiphyseal fusion is required to in order to have a normal height. Similar effects were also seen by a 24-year-old man with aromatase deficiency, because again there was a mutation in the aromatase gene. And again it has unfused epiphysis, and the bone age was 14. The height of that individual was again 6 feet 8 inches. So it was seen that even in the presence of very, very high amount of testosterone in the absence of estrogen, this epiphyseal fusion does not take place properly. Next is the cardiovascular function. Premenopausal women have a lower risk of coronary heart disease than men, or postmenopausal women and estrogen are thought to contribute to this lower risk. It is absolutely necessary that, for proper cardiovascular function, that there be a level of estrogen present, okay? Estrogen is important in maintaining the plasma level of HDL cholesterol. And remember, cholesterol becomes it's a precursor molecule for testosterone function. So some of the major functions of estrogen in males are these. And remember, although estrogen is considered to be a female hormone, its importance in the male reproductive system is immense. So here we are learning some of the pathophysiology of related to the male reproductive system or hormones. One of them is hypogonadism, which is related with hypergonadism. Hypogonadism may result from the failure of the pituitary gonadotropin secretion because of isolated effect of one or other gonadotrops. So I will go into this a little bit in the next slide. I just want to go over this first. So if you see, these are 8 weeks, 12 weeks, 28 weeks, and 42 weeks. These mice, these are normal wild type mice, and these are the knockout mice, where knockout mice of estrogen and testosterone. So you will see that these actually increase in weight. So hypogonadism results in obesity, and where there is loss production of gonadal hormones. Okay, so we can learn about a couple of other dysfunctions related with testosterone. One is known as testicular dysfunction, which is basically Klinefelter syndrome, which has lower testosterone levels. Remember, in this, in primary, there is lower testosterone levels, but has higher LH and FSH because it has a negative feedback loop, okay? Again, there can be pituitary dysfunction, where the levels of LH is low, FSH is low, which can actually lead to lower testosterone level, which can be called the secondary hypogonadism, okay? Or there can be lower levels of GnRH, which is Kallman syndrome, which again can lead to lower testosterone levels. So the arrows will help you to understand that from GnRH, if it is low, it can lead to lower levels of LH and FSH, which in turn can lead to lower levels of testosterone. And these are all part of when there are low levels of testosterone, which is known as hypogonadism. It can be primary hypogonadism, it can be secondary gonadism, secondary hypogonadism. Primary is mainly related with testosterone, and secondary is related, although the levels of testosterone is low, but it is mainly related with the hypothalamus producing lower levels of GnRH and anterior pituitary producing lower levels of FSH and LH. Similarly, primary hypergonadism may derive maybe because of tumors that produce excess of androgen. And remember, excess of androgen is also not wanted. In males, it can lead to impotence, less libido, higher levels of testosterone production, can also cause infertility. The one part, which is one pathophysiology, which is how the mechanism of action takes place, is androgen insensitivity syndrome. So the word or the name itself should help you to understand. AIS, androgen insensitivity syndrome. This is a condition which results from partial or complete inability of the cells to respond to androgen. That is, testosterone is unable to bind to its receptors, okay, to stimulate or control the development of male physiological condition characteristics. Now, this can be of two types. It can be receptor negative or it can be receptor positive. Various genetic defects can result in the synthesis of an abnormal androgen receptor with the loss of impairment of its ability to function. Okay. In general, it has been seen that mutation in the androgen binding domain results in androgen receptor. That is, whenever there is mutation in the androgen binding domain, which results in the formation of androgen receptor, that is unable to bind to its androgen. So if there is a mutation in the androgen binding domain, then androgen will not be able to bind with it, which is, which is what we understand. So there has to be an androgen binding domain in order for androgen to be able to bind to it. If there is a mutation in the androgen binding domain, the androgen will not bind to it, which is known as receptor negative androgen insensitivity syndrome, which is the first one, okay? Or in this, there can be altered activity also. The next is receptor positive form of or complete androgen insensitivity. There is normal binding of to the androgen receptor. However, the androgen receptor complex is incapable of interacting with the androgen response element of DNA sequence. Okay, so let's understand this once more. So the first one is there is a mutation in the androgen binding domain. So androgen cannot bind to it. As a result, it's known as receptor negative. On the other hand, the androgen can bind to its receptor. Here, it can bind to its receptor, but it cannot bind to the androgen response DNA element. As a result, if it cannot bind, the entire process does not take place. Both the end result is the same, that the process of testosterone or androgen formation, which affects in several actions, formation of proteins, does not take place, but how it does it can be a little different. It can pass through receptor negative or could be through receptor positive. So receptor negative when it cannot bind to its receptor, receptor positive when it's bind to its receptor but cannot bind to an androgen response element. So this concludes the chapter. I'm hoping that you will go over this this lecture very thoroughly. Remember, these are the relatively it is male reproductive system is relatively simpler than female reproductive system, and this will help you to understand the hormones and its function better. Thank you.